This is ND Insider's Pot of Gold. Now, with all things Notre Dame football, here's Tom Noie, Mike Berardino, and Austin Huff.
Back for a midweek edition of Pot of Gold from the WNDU Studios, your home to countdown to kickoff. My name is Tom Noie, joined by Mike Berardino and our producer, Jerry. We are talking Notre Dame football. The Irish up to number 10 in the AP poll this week after their relatively convincing win over Tennessee State. Would you say, Mike, 56-3?
Yeah, I had 59-0 going in.
Ooh.
You had 52-0 going in, and it could have been tied very easily at the end of the first quarter or late in the first quarter if a guy doesn't slip. When Notre Dame had 10 men on the field, I mean, if that sort of thing happened, gave up a tying touchdown against a team that's actually FBS, there'd be a lot of concern. It'd be a little wild, but they in general it was a romp that it was supposed to be, and Marcus Freeman saying that he thought Tennessee State might have been a little bit better in person than they were expecting, because they have mined that transfer portal as well. Eddie George trading on his Hall of Fame career and getting some people coming in there to be coached by him, and Jeff Fisher's kid, the bearded defensive coordinator. Quite a beard on that fella. I mean, Jerry's got, how long would Jerry have to just let that thing go to catch up with Brandon
A long
Fisher?
time.
It'd take me a minute. It would take me a minute.
Oh, my.
We're working on it.
It was ZZ Top stuff. Yeah.
It's that ridiculous?
You saw it. Oh, yeah. It's like,
I don't see anything from where we sit. We're so high up in that press box.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to see even the field and some of the numbers on those jerseys. So I was not beard watching on Saturday afternoon.
I got it in the headline because, we like people to click on our stories. And so I just talked about Sam Hartman winning the Battle of the Beards second straight week. The defensive mind across the way. I know Newberry's the head coach at Navy, but everybody gave him extra credit for his excellent beard, but bad beard on Brandon Fisher, Jeff's boy, and fine game for the bearded Sam Hartman. So, he seems to be hitting a nice rhythm.
Is that why I'm on this podcast before we actually do stuff? Because of the beard?
It is.
Is that the sole reason?
Yeah.
I click buttons, grow a beard. That's it.
You got the top button,
Yeah,
huh?
we moved it in.
How about that? And you're wearing Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte.
The Charlotte 49ers.
Used to be North Carolina
that.
at Charlotte in the Cornbread Maxwell days, and then at some point just became Charlotte. Now they have. Is the man's name Biff Poggi?
Yeah, from Michigan. Biff
Yeah.
Poggi.
Poggi.
One of those weird hires. You're
And
like,
Greer Martini's on his staff. Another fun name to say.
Yeah.
Former Notre Dame captain Greer Martini.
All those Notre Dame connections.
Anyway, back to live action.
Live action. Notre Dame now 2-0. They move up from 13 to 10 in the Associated Press poll. Not a lot of injury news coming out of Tennessee State, which, knock on wood, that's a good thing for Notre Dame. Matt Salerno did suffer from what Marcus Freeman has classified a significant leg injury. Don't know if that means knee, ankle, fibula, tibia, whatever it is, but it sounds like he's going to be out. I didn't even see it happen.
Salerno?
Yeah. If it happened on a punt return?
I think it happened late on a punt return. I did see him with a late punt return, but they went right, the commercial. I was watching it that way. So I don't know exactly, but it's a shame because this is a guy you talk about, they have plenty of weapons, but he's useful anytime he's on the field, and he tends to get open, and he's more athletic than you realize. So he did not have to come back for the 6th year. He did. He's an engineering student, I believe, and is adding to his credentials there, and he'll be eventually doing very well in the engineering realm. But we hope that he gets back soon. It sounds like Gabe Rubio might be back a little sooner. At least it's being suggested that he's a couple weeks away. I don't know. What does your history with the quick scope tell you it should be? What's the short end of having your knee scoped?
I am not speaking from experience. I've never had a significant injury in all my athletic endeavors, but definitely knock on wood on that. Seeing Gabe Rubio walk by Notre Dame Stadium after the Monday press conference before the Tennessee State game, and Marcus Freeman actually called out to Gabe Rubio, "Hey, I just told the media that you'd be back in 2 weeks." It didn't seem like he had some sort of significant knee injury. He was walking fine. He didn't have crutches. He didn't have one of the scooters that some of the players use when they're injured. He was walking over to the Goog, and Marcus Freeman swung by on his golf cart, picked him up, and brought him over to the Goog. So it looked like he was just walking from class to to the facility to get treatment. So I would think it would be on the short end for Gabe Rubio, but
there's a difference between being cleared for practice, as we know with Eli Raridan. Of course, that was a torn ACL, but this was just a little cleanup, I guess, right? A meniscus, most likely.
Yeah.
But he's in a high leverage situation. They do have other weapons around him now. Other guys who can take those. They've always had a very deep defensive line, but we're learning new names and new pronunciations. But would you? I mean, that's going to be an interesting question come Ohio State week, because is that where you want to make your return? I mean, they could use him. They certainly could use him. Gabe Rubio's really come a long way, but is that the proper way to get back into the mix?
Before we get to Ohio State, we do have a little issue this weekend with Notre Dame going back on the road, not going over the Atlantic Ocean like they did against Navy in Dublin to start the season, but they're going back into Atlantic Coast Conference play. They play North Carolina State at noon, ABC, Carter-Finley Stadium on Saturday. We'll talk a lot of North Carolina State with Luke DeCock coming up from the Raleigh News Observer, talk about the ACC, talk about the Wolfpack, Brennan Armstrong, what he sees from them, and maybe some stuff they didn't show their first game out against Connecticut. I watched that game. I almost fell asleep on Thursday watching that from East Hartford, Connecticut. Not a really easy on the eyes type of opener for NC State. So hopefully maybe it'll be different this weekend down in Raleigh, but we'll talk NC State stuff soon. Let's wrap up Tennessee State real quick. 3 things. These are Mike B's 3 things. Your 3 thoughts on Tennessee State game. What did you see? What did you like? What did you hope to see? What didn't you like? What would be number 1 on Mike B's 3 things?
Well, give me 3 seconds. Give me 3 steps. I will say that, the first one that I wrote about was that the defense, obviously there's a lot of talk, and there should be, that Notre Dame is kind of one of those stats that you think, well, that should have happened more recently, but not since 1976, right? 76?
76 or 75?
75. It was 75. Has Notre Dame gone 2 games into the season without giving up a touchdown? And so they can say that. Of course, that was Dan Devine's team, and they.
Who did they have on that defense?
Well, they had guys like Luther Bradley and Ross Browner and Willie Fry, but and a number of other greats. But that team, I think it was 75. I think it was 75 is what it was, because it was after the full year suspension for those dudes.
Mm-hmm.
And they opened with Purdue and Boston College that year, but ended up 8-3. To be historically significant is the point of that analysis, was you're going to have to start holding teams like NC State out of the end zone. So this would be a good place to start. That's going to be a big ask with Brennan Armstrong across the way. Other things about Tennessee State to point out, I guess, one of my things, I'm going to go back and say that, Sam Hartman won the Battle of the Beards. I'm going to count that one.
Do we have to have a Sam Hartman topic every single week, the way he's played?
Well, forget the way he played. The thing that will make us talk about Sam Hartman all year is what he had done before he ever got here, how he got here, and everything that's happened and will happen since he got here. He moves the needle. He will continue to move the needle, good or bad, injured and he's had to overcome some injuries, of course, over the course of his career, or healthy, Heisman contender, or falling off the map with interceptions and fumbles at some point. Although I still think he's going to take this Heisman thing. And I think you're on record saying there's a pretty good chance that he gets to that downtown athletic club, at least in the final 5.
I am on record for that.
You wrote something about that, but
maybe
you said,
I said not yet. Let's hold off on that yet.
I think he's going to get there, and I have noted the odds on that. I'm monitoring that because that's fascinating that Jordan Travis certainly bumped his name up the list a little bit.
Absolutely.
The other night. But guys like Jaden Daniels is now behind Sam Hartman, as he should be. Cade Klubnik was exposed, and he's behind Sam Hartman. A lot of people saying that Cade Klubnik was, a creation of Jaden Greathouse's greatness. That might be a little much. They're pretty good. They have a lot of weapons down there at Westlake.
Jaden Greathouse made Cade Klubnik.
That's what they're saying. That's what the people are saying. So I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch that film. And haven't watched film yet, Tom. But
I got to see the film before I comment. But here's the one comment I have on Sam Hartman. he and the Irish offense have had the ball 9 times.
Yeah,
times. I feel like I needed to play that clip from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So 9 times in the first half against Navy. They had it 4 against Tennessee State.
Dude.
Would you just stop? Where are we going with this? Where are we going? So 9 times. Say it one more time.
9 times.
9 times Sam Hartman and the Irish offense have had the ball in the first half, the first 2 games. They have scored 9 touchdowns. So that's why we talk about Sam Hartman. Beard aside, rib necklace aside, the guy's a really good quarterback. And if you're going to be a really good quarterback at Notre Dame, people are going to talk about you every week. So that's why we talk about Sam Hartman.
Oh, they'll talk about you whether you're good or bad, right?
Yeah, I don't know about bad.
But this is the thing. Sam Hartman can bring in the casual fan. He can bring in the outright non-sports fan. He's the guy he's talking on the screen or he's waving his shillelagh or whatever, you know. And then he's going to be the guy who the girlfriend or the wife is walking through with somebody is watching in his man cave. And he's like, oh, who's that? And then she sits down and she watches. And now she's a Sam Hartman fan. He moves the meter. He's interesting when he speaks. He's a little monotone. But he's got a sense of humor, and we're starting to see that more as he's in front of the media more. And and I like that he's goofing on himself more about the 24-year-old thing. You can't run away from that. You can't act like, because I do think every time he talks about his mom, and Lisa Hartman sounds like a great mom, and Mark is his dad. But anytime he's throwing out gratuitous references to his mom, it's almost felt like he's trying to, act like, childish or younger or whatever. But yeah, everybody loves their mom. But I like it when this idea that Marcus Freeman at 37 is more like a big brother to 24-year-old Sam Hartman than a father figure, because I think that if a 13-year-old were to have a bearded baby like that or create one, that would be confusing and that would be a concern. So they're too close in age, and also let's not forget Jared Parker's just a couple years older. He might be 40, so I think he's his big brother too. So Sam Hartman's just getting to do cool things and getting a lot more attention than he ever got at Wake Forest, play in front of more people than he's ever played, more than twice the capacity at Wake Forest, whatever they're calling it now, stadium. And he gets to go back to Tobacco Road with a shiny gold helmet.
How about that? So was Sam Hartman, I lost track on your Mike B's 3 things.
I'm done with that.
How many things have we done?
You had Sam Hartman.
Stop it with the things.
You had defense.
9 things.
What happened? What happened
9.
with that? I didn't have a number 3.
You're going to write them down?
I did write them down so I can reference them if we need to reference them. What were your 3 things, your 3 takeaways from Tennessee State? We had defense. We had Sam Hartman. What else did we have?
Steve Angeli did a nice job spinning away from pressure. Steve Angeli, we no longer can say, well, he's not, you talk about the year of first for Marcus Freeman in 2022. Maybe this is a year of first for Steve Angeli, but within reason. Because he's already, came into the year, had never thrown a pass in a live college game. Well, now he has. He completed one over in Ireland. It was a quick one, but he completed it. And now he's also thrown the first 2 touchdown passes of his career. He has yet to start a game, but he's started a second half. I don't think Notre Dame wants him to start a game this year, but this will factor. I think we're going to see more of him against Central Michigan if Notre Dame brings it the way it should in that game.
Look at you jumping ahead already. Again, Ohio State, you're talking about Central Michigan, you're talking about the Wolfpack are going to get mad at you.
No, I'm more than ready to talk about NC State whenever you'd like, but I'm not taking that for granted. But I'm just saying that in terms of Steve Angeli, you shouldn't see him at NC State, but you got a chance to see him. So you want another thing? You wanted a thing?
Mike B's 3 things.
Thing 3, then I'm going to say that that was a good thing to see Angeli get a little positive. They're calling him Check Down Steve, apparently, on the sideline. That's what they're calling him on the sideline. That's what Estime, happy birthday. Well, today's Wednesday. We can say that. Audric Estime's 20, Estime. And he dubbed the backup quarterback Check Down Steve because he found Jadarian Price and he found Jabron Payne and then let them do all the legwork. And
when Steve Angeli threw that touchdown pass to Jadarian Price, what was the significance of that?
It was, well, how many things do you want? No, is this a thing?
Yeah, what? No.
I'm counting this?
No, we're not. We're done with the 3 things. We're done with that.
I was done a while
ago. We were on like thing 16.
Yeah.
So
They're roommates and best friends, and we didn't know that, but
yes.
they're roommates and best friends now. Jadarian's great. I think I'd like a new thing. He has to come in and speak to the media after every game, regardless. He just really he's now 2 for 2, or no. He came in. Well, no, that's right. He came in a few days later.
He came in the week of
the
Tennessee State.
We've seen him twice already.
Yeah,
and I think whether after the game or during the week, there should be a little time for Jadarian to come in because he seems to enjoy it. He's very analytical. He's very calm about it, and he's just dropping knowledge. And that was something that he said he was running down the field laughing. I believe
he was laughing as he was headed to the end zone.
Steve just threw me his first touchdown pass because that's pretty cool. And of course, he also I wonder if he started laughing before or after he juked the Tennessee State. I think it was a linebacker or a safety right out of his cleats. I mean, that guy got spun, and then he just ran untouched the rest of the way, laughing to the end zone.
Laughing into the end zone with Steve Angeli's first career touchdown pass goes to his roommate. So, yeah, pretty cool. Yeah. So we saw that. We saw a lot of other stuff against Tennessee State, against Navy. What haven't we seen the first 2 weeks of this college football season from Notre Dame that maybe we're still unsure about or needed to see heading into Saturday's game against North Carolina State?
You go first.
No, I'm the moderator. See, I ask the questions.
You get the benefit of creating the dialogue, and then I have to answer it, and then you tell me if it doesn't make sense. You answer that one. What did you not see yet, pal?
I create the content. It's your job to work around the content and the questions.
According to
and I kind of steer this ship. I get us in and out of the breaks. I get us the
columnist. You're the guy who tells us what we're supposed to think. What are you waiting to see, big guy?
I save that for. What am I waiting to see?
Yeah, what have you not seen in 2 weeks?
I am waiting to see consistent downfield threat. How about that from the wide receiver spot?
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. I'll give you that one.
Ding.
Because my assumption was going in that there'd be a lot more downfield 50-50 ball, the trust factor, let the big, lanky Tobias Merriweather come down. Tobias's only catch so far is just a little quick one underneath.
A sit-down catch.
Yeah.
He caught the ball and he sat down.
Not really.
It wasn't really a catch.
Not really in his repertoire.
No.
We would expect not as advertised. So, yeah, you'd like to see some more of that. But then again, that's a risk-reward proposition. Sam Hartman has been so well protected so far in these 2 games. This is going to be something to watch. I think you asked, what have we not seen that we want to see in terms of a prove it to me method? I like to see some more activity by Jalen Sneed because I'm on record saying this guy can really be a game changer. He's getting snaps, but I want to see him factor more. I like that Al Golden factor thing. In the way that, say, Josh Burnham has factored in limited snaps, I'd like to see Jalen Sneed blow up some more plays, and I think that could be coming.
Let's see where Jalen Sneed is. Where is he on the... He has 4 tackles in 2 games. So, but again, I don't know how much you unlock Jalen Sneed unless you're going to sit one of those linebackers in Jack Kaiser, J.D. Bertrand, or Maris Leofau.
I think he can play a little viper there too. I think you throw him around. I think you just kind of move him around like some programs call it the jack. And
what about the Aztec?
Like well, the Aztec,
they use that already.
They have that. That's really just a dime package, and I don't know if that's kind of a subtweet on the ancient Aztecs and perhaps their use of calming herbs, or I don't know, but it's a change the dime package to the Aztec, and really that's all it is.
Jerry, what do you think about that? Herbs?
I don't know.
Yes or no?
Is this a Mayan? Are we going to do Mayan next? Inca? Are we Incas?
Dime just means, a nickel is 5, and a dime bag, that's 6 guys back there, and in your defensive backfield. And Aztec, I'm just throwing it out there.
Wherever we go. Welcome to our pre-production meeting of Pot of Gold.
Yeah, I don't know where the dime bag reference was.
Tom to answer. Tom can answer the next one.
We have a dime baggie here.
I cede my time to the senator from Dayton.
Totally, completely off the rails on a rainy muggy Wednesday here in South Bend, Indiana for the weekly Pot of Gold podcast. I don't know where to go after that. Segment.
Let's go to break.
Should we just go to break? Let's go to break. We'll come back with Luke DeCock from the Raleigh News Observer, talk a little North Carolina State, Notre Dame, and hopefully there will be no references of Incas or dime bags or anything else.
9.
Back on the Pot of Gold, a midweek edition with Mike Berardino. My name is Tom Noie, and we bring in a guest from the Raleigh News and Observer. He's been there since 2000, covered 6 Final Fours. He's the former president of the United States Basketball Writers Association and a guy that is so excited to see a big Monday matchup between Duke and Cal in Cameron Indoor Stadium that he might even sleep in a tent for a week in Krzyzewskiville. We bring in Luke DeCock. Luke, what's happening, my man?
I will never. I appreciate the joke. I think it's 7 Final Fours. I need to update my bio.
Oh, yeah. What's this bio here? I did all this research on you this morning.
This research.
Just throw it all out. But also,
as usual, I got to check your facts. It's fine.
Check the facts. And then also, I did forget to mention that, like myself, Luke DeCock is a native of Evanston, Illinois. So right there, we're like, yeah, we got to have him on.
Go Wild Kids.
Wild Kids. Okay, so let's get into it real quick.
No hazing.
No hazing going on.
That's the Wildcats, not the kids. Not the kids. That's the high school.
Yeah, it is 2023, and if it's 2023, that means it is the 10-year anniversary of Notre Dame joining the Atlantic Coast Conference. What has Notre Dame's relationship been with this league?
It's funny. I think it's 2 very different relationships depending on the situation. I think in terms of you look at sort of the so-called non-revenue Olympic sports, men's basketball, especially when Mike Bray was there, women's basketball. I think Notre Dame's been a really good fit. I mean, there's been some rivalries, there's been some great games, there's been some competition. It seems like everybody kind of seems to get along. I mean, I think when you look strictly at that, what we now know based on the revenue agreement is that 20% of this. That's worked really well, both for Notre Dame and the ACC. I mean, it's not any more of a geographic outlier than Syracuse is. I think that part of it, the non-football part of it has worked pretty well. And I think, you've got a men's basketball championship there. Women's basketball is obviously a powerhouse. These are programs that, for the most part, and obviously there have been some dips and whatever here, baseball too, I mean, have added something to the ACC. And I think Notre Dame, has found the ACC to be a good sort of place, to use Jack Swarbrick's words, a place for those sports, and that's worked out well. I mean, I think the issue is football, and not just that Notre Dame isn't a member of the ACC football. I mean, obviously the independence was part of that 2013 deal, but I think what football means to sort of ACC governance. And the big issue is Notre Dame having a 20% interest in the ACC and 100% of a vote at a time when football is the end-all, be-all in college athletics, and Notre Dame's football interests this is just a fact, it's like the weather, whatever is good for Notre Dame is going to be bad for the ACC, and whatever is good for the ACC is going to be bad for Notre Dame football. It's just a fact. It's not a value judgment. That's just in those interests. Notre Dame's interests as a football independent are not going to be aligned with the interests of a Power 5 conference. And yet Notre Dame not only gets a full vote, Father Jenkins chaired the search committee that, hired Jim Phillips. And we can talk about, that, but, when you empower Notre Dame to make decisions about the ACC, you're empowering someone who doesn't have the ACC's best interests in mind. And, I think that creates issues for the ACC, especially when you look at this latest expansion vote that Notre Dame was, pushing as strongly as anybody. I think that, does create some governance issues that make it very difficult for the ACC. But I think when you look strictly at football by itself in a vacuum, I think having these non-conference games against Notre Dame has been good for the ACC. I mean, I think it's added something. People look forward to playing Notre Dame, and everybody gets to do it every couple of years. It's a big home game for NC State or anybody. So that part of it actually, I think, has worked reasonably well for the ACC. I thought the COVID year when Notre Dame was part of the conference, that worked really well too. And we can get into sort of the areas where the ACC has let Notre Dame off the hook over the years, and that was certainly one of them. But I was surprised that there wasn't sort of a more favorable takeaway on, I guess is the word, on the Notre Dame side of sort of playing meaningful games in November, having a conference championship to play for, playing in a conference championship game, having games that meant something. I think, it's hard to look at, playing Stanford in November in a year when Notre Dame isn't a national title contender and feel like that game actually matters in a lot of ways. And obviously when you're in a conference, it does. I thought people would come out of that saying, hey, that was cool, or maybe that was better than we thought, because obviously when you've never been in a conference, you don't know what it's like. And that's fine. You want to form opinions based on experience. And I thought that might change the dialogue a little bit, and it didn't. So that was sort of interesting to me. But I think that would sort of be my state of the relationship speech to that extent. I mean, I just think it's hard when you have a school that's interests aren't necessarily aligned with the ACC playing an active role in ACC governance. I just think, now, Tom, you and I have had this discussion. It doesn't mean the ACC has to listen to Notre Dame. And nope. As I wrote, Notre Dame acting in its own interests, you can't fault Notre Dame for that. You can't, as I wrote, you can't fault a raccoon for getting in your garbage. It's your fault you didn't lock the cans.
When Notre Dame was a member of the Big East, it was understood from Commissioner Mike Tranghese all the way down to the member schools and the presidents and the ADs. There was no way ever, regardless of what happened to Big East football, with Syracuse leaving, with Boston College leaving, with Pittsburgh leaving, there was no way that Notre Dame was ever going to join the Big East in all sports to save football. Why has it been so hard for people down your way in the ACC to understand? It seems like every time something happens with that league, Florida State might be leaving, Clemson might be leaving, and North Carolina doesn't want to vote in the new member. Their solution is just get Notre Dame to join, and everything will be okay. Notre Dame is never joining the ACC. Do they not understand that down there?
Well, I mean, I think they look at the fact that this is another thing that Swarbrick sort of allied in that NBC interview is there is an agreement. Part of the grant of rights is that Notre Dame does join a football conference. It has to be the ACC. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a good lawyer. And there are probably a million ways around that. But it is on paper. And so there is sort of a foundation for that thought. The other part of it is when you look at the ACC and what is the one thing that could sort of instantly fix the revenue gap or address it a lot more than $3 million a year is going to, taking a school that joined you with the possibility of joining for football, because that is on paper, and saying, why don't they join? I mean, that's a solution a lot of people want to consider. Yeah, I mean, we know what the grounds are, the ground rules are. We know what the circumstances would have to be for that to change. And, it's not having a media partner, and it's not having access to the college football playoff. And another example of Notre Dame not working in the ACC's interest was the original college football expansion plan that Swarbrick and Sankey were trying to slide under the door before anyone found out that the SEC had added Oklahoma and Texas. That was not a great plan for the ACC. And that's one of the reasons why the ACC pumped the brakes on it once it became public. So there's that. I mean, right now, I think everything we see with college football playoff expansion indicates that Notre Dame would have a wide open path to a national title. So I don't think that's going to be an issue unless that falls apart again. And the other one is the rights deal. And that was one of the reasons why I thought the ACC acted precipitously in expanding is if you're Notre Dame and your next deal with NBC Universal is a bunch of games on Peacock and one game a year on Big NBC because NBC is going all in with the Big Ten and the rights market's collapsing and we see what's happening with ESPN and Spectrum, that's only going to get worse. It feels like, maybe being on ABC and ESPN wouldn't be as bad as once thought. Especially if the money was there, because you could go back to ESPN as the ACC with Notre Dame and rewrite a lot of the terms of this deal. So I think that's why people look at it. Whether or not it'll ever happen is a completely different story. But you can't look at the ACC's issues and say that adding Notre Dame wouldn't fix a lot of them. Right. And it becomes a little rich when you have a Notre Dame athletic director suggesting that adding Cal and Stanford is going to help fix the ACC. To me, that's just the kind of thing that's going to drive the big Notre Dame closer to the Big Ten, which, based on what we've heard from Swarbrick, is clearly where Notre Dame wants to be if it ever joins a conference.
Speaking with Luke DeCock, the longtime columnist of the Raleigh News Observer, and you should check out Luke's stuff at newsobserver.com. And Luke, I want to guide people. I want to ask you about this the column that you wrote just a few days ago after the vote that NC State essentially gave Notre Dame the vote it needed to get what it wanted. And the title of the column is "They Destroyed the ACC in Order to Save It. I gather that Notre Dame's part of the they there, but Randy Woodson is the chancellor at NC State, and he does not come off very well in this assessment. And it's an excellent column that I've just pulled up and started to read. And shame on me, I hadn't read it already. But what should people know about the dynamic right now between NC State and Notre Dame? I mean, at Notre Dame, people, when they come upon Randy Woodson, of course, Boo Corrigan is the athletic director, and the Corrigan name goes back decades and continues to resonate at Notre Dame with a lacrosse championship. How chummy is the relationship right now between NC State and Notre Dame, just on that vote?
Yeah, I mean, that, obviously there were 12 schools that voted yes, so it's not, as if Notre Dame and NC State were a block. And
they had to flip them
about Randy Woodson.
They had to flip, right? That? This was the vote they needed to flip.
Yeah, but
this was the one.
The flip had nothing to do with Notre Dame. I mean, Randy Woodson was against it before he was for it, and this has everything to do with Cal and Stanford promising things to NC State that in terms of membership in the AAU, things like that. The sort of slight bump in the financials. I mean, Randy Woodson flipped his votes for reasons that have nothing to do with Notre Dame, even though they're playing this weekend. You got to remember, Randy Woodson was on the NCAA board of directors that voted to extend Mark Emmert's contract, and then a year later voted to fire Mark Emmert. So, Randy Woodson is not up there in the annals of great corporate governance on the college athletic side. But no, I mean, I think when you look at, the idea of destroying it in order to save it is, the fear is that Clemson and UNC and Florida State are going to find a way out. I think based on everyone's reading of the grant of rights, the earliest that could have happened was the sort of 29, 30, 31 era where the numbers in the grant of rights start to become more reasonable or doable, depending on how you want to look at it. And now by voting for this over the objections of those schools, they've encouraged those schools to find an exit sooner, which is going to mean more spending on lawyers, maybe doing some things that they wouldn't have otherwise out of sort of brotherhood or collegiality. And you've added schools in the fear that these schools might leave that are going to hurt your negotiating position with ESPN when that contract does expire in 2036. And no one knows what the rights market is going to look like then, but just in 2023 terms, imagine going to ESPN without UNC, without Florida State, without Clemson, with Cal, with Stanford, which we know the Big 12, if ESPN wanted those schools, they'd be in the Big 12 now. Same for SMU. You're probably going to lose Miami and Virginia as part of that. Notre Dame is tied to the ACC by the grant of rights, but it's 20% of it. I mean, and with football independence, Notre Dame can structure a deal with another conference where it gets paid everything for football and nothing for its other sports. So the grant of rights pretty irrelevant for Notre Dame. I mean, that's just a financial decision in terms of exit fees and all of that. You could be going back to ESPN without UNC, without Florida State, without Clemson, without Notre Dame, potentially without Virginia or Miami, and with Cal, Stanford, and SMU. I mean, you're not even the Big 12 at that point. You're the AAC. You're not even the basketball in the Big East. You have no football powers. You've got a couple basketball schools, and you got a bunch of schools with small private schools like Boston College and Wake with small alumni bases that don't move the needle, especially from a streaming perspective. So you've by any measure, you've weakened this conference for the long term. Not to mention, it's a Ponzi scheme. The only money in this is from these schools not taking any money. By the time 2036 comes around, they're going to want a full boat. They're not going to. SMU's not going to say, "No, we're good for another 20 years with nothing." And then you've got a smaller pie to share with more people, and you've done this all out of panic because you really didn't have to do anything until 2030. That's when this got down to kind of the nitty gritty, and those schools would, under other circumstances, have a chance to leave. Now you've basically told them they're not welcome in the conference. We're going to move on without you, regardless of what you think. And NC State, by flipping, loses any chance it had of being yoked politically with UNC. I mean, NC State can't go to the North Carolina legislature like Virginia Tech now and say, you've got to make them take us, as they did with when the ACC expanded the first time. The legislators are going to say, you had your chance, and you chose to stay here, so deal with it. The joke is that Randy Woodson traded membership in the AAU for membership in the AAC.
It's a good one. That AAU, that's not the Amateur Athletic Union, but that's something that I'd never even heard about until I didn't hear about it until Notre Dame was allowed into it, and it seemed when you look at the list, and Luke's probably got it memorized. That was an amazing breakdown. But I have looked at some of the ones that, and I don't have it in front of me yet, but there's some obviously great institutions, or perception would tell you that they should be on it, and then there's some that's like, what are they doing on it? And I don't want to call anybody out, or it seems random, and that's the expose I want to read is what kind of back channel agreements and how follow the money on getting into the AAU. Wow.
Well, and here's the other part of it, right? Who cares?
Yeah.
You think a single NC State football fans cares whether NC State's in the AAU or not? No. You know who cares?
No.
University presidents.
Yep.
It's all for the glorification of their own egos, which is another reason why they shouldn't be in charge of college athletics. But we've known that for years now. And Bill, you guys may not know who Bill Friday is. He was the president of the UNC system. He was an early reformer in college athletics, along with Father Hesburgh. They were lockstep at the Knight Commission. And there was kind of their idea that university presidents were the best people to oversee athletics. And I think if you look at, they're all men like them. Friday was an incredible forward thinker, an incredible educator, just a brilliant mind. If college presidents were all like them, we'd be fine. But they're not. College presidents in 2023, by and large, reached that position by being fundraisers, same as many ADs now. That's the name of the game is not, are you a leader? Are you an educator? Are you a visionary? It's, can you squeeze nickels out of people? And they're squeezing every last nickel out of college athletics because that's what they know how to do. Since this is a Notre Dame conversation, I will use a Bible verse. I think it's Genesis 25.
Whoa, look at you.
Which is brother Esau selling his birthright for a mess of pottage. And the ACC sold its existence for $3 million a year. It's the financial equivalent of a lentil stew.
I would just like to chime in and say that I can tell you that Esau, as far as I recall, means red hairy one. And so that's it. And I don't know what we're seeing with Jerry. This is Jerry, not Esau.
Put the leprechaun up on the screen.
That's it. So there you go. Blame Esau.
Okay, I have no Bible verses. I have more football talk. Notre Dame rides into Raleigh this weekend, having won 28 consecutive regular season ACC games dating back to 2018. The Irish have not lost an ACC game, regular season game, since 2017 when they went down to Miami Gardens, Florida, and got beat by Miami. How much does that 28-game win streak sting that league, the ACC? Like, they have Notre Dame as a scheduling partner, 5 games, sometimes 4, sometimes 6. But doesn't Jim Phillips go to his football coaches and say, somebody's got to beat these guys?
Yeah, I think some of it is a little bit sort of situational, and Notre Dame, to a certain extent, has caught the right teams at the right time. We obviously saw what happened in 2021 or 2020. I saw Duke beat Notre Dame in South Bend. I was there for that game. I wasn't at the Hurricane game the last time Notre Dame was in Raleigh, but I think that losing streak stings less in Raleigh because of the way Brian Kelly embarrassed himself the last time he was there. So throwing 72 passes in a howling hurricane.
In wind and rain and mud and let me just throw the ball.
3 inches of water. So, I think a little bit of it is situational, but there's no question it rankles, and I'm sure it's, it's a terrible look for the ACC, which is just, ACC has such a hard time getting football credibility to begin with. Like, there's a clip going around on whatever we're calling it this morning, social media disgrace, of an ESPN graphic that says ACC's opening weekend struggles: Virginia, Boston College, Georgia Tech all lose. And it's like, it's a take. It is a take. Florida State walked LSU. Duke dethrones Clemson, which may be bad for the league overall, but certainly makes things more interesting and suggests that Duke may be something to be reckoned with. UNC beats South Carolina. Go up and down the big wins for the ACC in week 1, and we're talking about the 3 worst teams in the league losing. So it's really hard for the ACC to gain that sort of public relations momentum football-wise. And look, part of that's deserved, right? You go back 15 years when they added Miami and Virginia Tech and Boston College. All 3 of those schools were really good at football at that time. I think people forget including Boston College, which played in two of the first couple ACC championship games, and Florida State too, for that matter. And for the most part, over the last 15 years, those schools have been hot garbage. Miami disappoints every year. They won one Coastal Division title. Virginia Tech's fallen off the face of the earth since Frank Beamer retired, and even when he was still there. Boston College is completely irrelevant in football, which is sad because when Boston College is good, it's vaguely entertaining. The ACC's biggest football brands have been a disaster. It's been Clemson and, UNC, the sleepingest giant that ever slept. And, you look at Florida State being good once a decade, Miami disappointing. I mean, those are the football brands that move the needle with ESPN. And when you can't get those teams in the college football playoff, you're going to have a hard time sort of burnishing your reputation as a football league. Losing all these games to Notre Dame doesn't help with that. But I do think it's a little bit, I don't want to say bad luck for the ACC, but there have been some winnable games that were lost. And then there were games like last year at North Carolina where, North Carolina got found out. I mean, that was Notre Dame just punched him in the face, and UNC had no reaction. And that sort of sent their season spiraling. I mean, the fights on the sideline didn't help. But, so to a certain extent, I think a little bit of it. If you look at the schools that UNC has beat, a lot of them were games, Notre Dame. A lot of those were games you were going to expect Notre Dame to win, no matter whether the ACC had two teams in the CFP or none. There's been a couple of coin flip games in there, obviously, that Notre Dame has won, and you roll that together, you get to into the 20s. So it'll be really interesting. I mean, I do think that streak is going to end at some point. I don't know if it'll be Saturday. I do think that the team Notre Dame is going to see on Saturday is not going to resemble NC State last year, and it's not going to resemble NC State in week one. I mean, I think playing UConn, even on the road, well-coached UConn team, sneaky tough opener. I really think, based on looking at that game, that NC State kept everything in the playbook to save it for Notre Dame. And we're expecting to see some fireworks from Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anaya like they did at Virginia 2 years ago. I don't think NC State showed any of its hand to UConn. I think they're saving it for Notre Dame, and I think that's going to be really, really interesting to see if that is, in fact, the case.
What about the Sam Hartman factor? And, the narrative here is, even with the offensive coordinator, Jared Parker, is that, Hartman was running the slow mesh offense at Wake Forest, apples and oranges somewhat with a pro-style offense, but still the memory bank for Sam Hartman contains 6 interceptions career against NC State. Those guys on the other side, Tony Gibson and the people that he's lining up, have positive outcomes to draw from. And Sam Hartman's 1-2 career against NC State. What stands out to you about that matchup? Why do you think it's gone the way it has for a guy who generally, passing wise, has had his way?
Well, I mean, part of it is State's over the last 4 to 5 years, had one of the best defenses in the ACC. It probably doesn't get the credit it deserves. Last year had one of the best linebacking cores probably ever at NC State, and a terrific defensive line. I mean, they've gotten a lot of pressure on Sam Hartman. The other thing you got to remember is teams that see the Wake Forest slow mesh a lot, and that's Atlantic Division teams like NC State, or Duke, which would play Wake every year in the old system, tend to do better with it. It's less novel when you see it every year and your players know it and are prepared for it. So I think, there's a sense there that whatever Wake can get over on schools that don't see Wake play as much doesn't work against State. And State's had a really, really good defense the last couple of years that Sam Hartman's been playing against. I do think that Sam Hartman is a really good quarterback. I'm not surprised by what he's done at Notre Dame so far at all. There's sort of a weird narrative out there that like now Sam Hartman's going to get to unleash the full potential of passing. Like, I've watched Sam Hartman for the last couple of years. Like, he was really good at Wake. Like, there's nothing he's doing at Notre Dame that doesn't look like what he did at Wake to me. So, it's kind of an interesting narrative that it sort of crossed into my consciousness. But, I think NC State probably, you could say, is a function of being really well prepared for Wake Forest as much as any mojo they have over Sam Hartman. Wake and State have played some really good games over the years. That 1-2 record is not necessarily indicative of its performance. And there were a couple of those interceptions where Wake trailing late trying to get back into the game. So I don't think there's any mojo there. I do think that players on the state defense are going to look familiar to him, and that he's going to look familiar to several players on the state defense. But when you're running a completely different offense, I'm not sure there's that much crossover there. That was more of a state Wake thing to me than anything with Sam Hartman.
Whether it's watching Kevin Keats in North Carolina State men's basketball or the Carolina Hurricanes make a run at another Stanley Cup, you've spent a lot of time across the street over at PNC Arena. What is a Saturday afternoon at Carter-Finley Stadium like for those of us, like myself, uninitiated to North Carolina State football Saturday?
I think you're going to be surprised. I mean, I would say it's very much an SEC environment. I mean, it's a stadium that is surrounded by parking lots. There's a lot of parking. There's an extremely strong, vibrant tailgating culture. You're going to see thousands of people come to the Murphy Center, which is their football center at the south end zone, to watch the team and the band get off the buses and come through. You'll see a parking lot full of RVs, as you would at an SEC stadium. I mean, I think when you look across the ACC, other than Clemson, I mean, NC State's probably your number 2 outside the stadium game environment. And it's pretty good. I mean, you mentioned the arena. I mean, we've been going through here in this market sort of a 2-year debate / discussion on not only renovating that arena, which is 25 years old now, but developing around it, because the arena too is just surrounded by asphalt surface parking lots, and they want to turn that, and they're going to turn that into a mixed use development, like an urban downtown arena. But part of the agreement to get that done was 5 acres on the stadium side. There's a street that runs between them, east-west. So 5 acres on the north side of that street facing the stadium have to be preserved as surface parking for tailgating purposes. And as they convert these lots into parking decks, half of any parking that's converted into a deck has to remain surface parking. So if you take 1,000 surface spots, 500 can go into a deck, 500 have to remain surface parking. So there's a very clear and direct connection to tailgating. I mean, that was very intentional to preserve that culture. So I think you'll find that to be a big deal.
That is Luke DeCock. He is from the Raleigh News and Observer, covers everything ACC. Our guy, I told you we'd get you out in 20 minutes. I spent 5 more, so appreciate the time. Go take a shower. We'll see you on Saturday.
Hit the shower. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
stuff.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
Take care.
Back on the pot of gold here at the WNDU Studios, your home to countdown to kickoff. We've talked Notre Dame, Tennessee State. Put a bow on that. We've talked North Carolina State with Luke DeCock. Now, it's prediction time, Mike Berardino. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first in what's going to happen Saturday at Carter-Finley Stadium? Kickoff at noon on ABC.
You brought it up. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead. So my prediction, I've predicted it on Countdown to Kickoff. I've predicted it in the South Bend Tribune. Might as well make it 3 for 3 here at Pot of Gold. I will say 34-17. It doesn't look easy for Notre Dame and Raleigh in its first true road game, trying to extend its ACC win streak to 29 consecutive regular season games that the Irish have won dating back to the start of the 2018 season. Doesn't look easy, but Sam Hartman, the running game, the offense, the defense, they make it look relatively easy against Brennan Armstrong, the North Carolina State quarterback, who, if some things may have not have worked out the way they did in the transfer portal, could have wound up at the University of Notre Dame as the quarterback. But Notre Dame settles on Sam Hartman. They get their guy. Sam Hartman throws a couple touchdowns. Spencer Schrader kicks a couple of field goals. The defense bends, but it doesn't break. I'm going 34-17. The Irish return home 3-0.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be a little more eventful, a little trickier in the fourth quarter. I'm saying Sam Hartman's first fourth quarter comeback as a Notre Dame quarterback will be led this Saturday. I see. Here's the thing. Final score will be 24-20 is my guess, but and Notre Dame wins. But you're coming off, at some point jet lag kicks in. It didn't kick in, I don't believe, against Tennessee State. And when you think back to 2012, and I'm just still thinking about the way Mike Golick Jr. described for me what they all were going through, that Notre Dame team coming back to play Purdue, and they found themselves in a fourth quarter pickle and had to win on a last-minute field goal. It was survival mode. I think Notre Dame's going to have a survival mode kind of game. The noon start will factor in. The odd environment there at NC State is going to be loud. There's going to be guys asking Pat Coogan about. I was asking him about the silent count and how confident he was, how much time they really haven't had a chance to do it in a game situation. They've practiced it where they pipe in the crowd noise. So
maybe the heat's a factor as well.
Yeah, there's several things. Sam Hartman playing against a team that has had his number in some ways in the past. Luke DeCock, explaining away some of that. A couple of those 6 interceptions were kind of late, come from behind heaves. But if 24-20 feels about right for Notre Dame, an escape job requiring, and I think it'll be good for them, for the Irish to be tested and have to build a little bit of that feeling that they're up to the challenge.
What happens at North Carolina State? Do the Irish come back 3-0? How does Sam Hartman play? We'll talk about all that next week when we return on Pot of Gold here at the WNDU Studios. Your home for Countdown to Kickoff. For producer Jerry, for Mike Berardino, my name is Tom Noie, and this has been Pot of Gold.
This is ND Insider's Pot of Gold. Now, with all things Notre Dame football, here's Tom Noie, Mike Berardino, and Austin Huff.